They always say, well, you hate fashion, you don't like fashion. It's not true. I like fashion, but fashion has no role in my pictures. When I work with somebody, you in a way you disappear and the camera disappears, and then there is kind of a space opens up. There's a room who installs themselves, and then in that room, that person you photograph steps in and gives you something, and then however you react, then you react to that, and then they give you more and more, and it's like a conversation or something.
Hi, welcome back. In the late 1980s, Peter Lindbergh dared to do what few fashion photographers had done before. He portrayed models as real people. He's famous for being the photographer most closely associated with the emergence of the supermodel phenomenon. His fashion and his portraits look more like chance moments from a reportage feature. Recently I was on a trip and had the opportunity to check out a few photographic exhibitions in London. I thought that this one could be interesting, so I went along. Mostly, as one would expect, the exhibition was dominated by glitzy, beautiful people wearing clothes with over-the-top price tags. But Lindbergh's images made me stop and look a little closer. His photographs were arresting because they had depth, as if he was photographing the person rather than the model or the clothing. His work didn't seem to fit with most of the other slick, superficial photographs on exhibition. He drew inspiration from street photographers, photojournalists, and documentary photographers like Dorothy Lang and Walker Evans. He was moved by the blunt realism that they managed to capture.
Dynamos is always a very good measurement for things, no? The truthfulness of Dynamos and all the American farm administration photographers, no? Who went through America during the Depression. I mean, all this truthfulness, no? Is, striking, and you can, of course, you get influenced.
One can sometimes see that he's borrowed from the aesthetics of these other photographic genres. Even if one has no interest at all in fashion photography, there's something really valuable to learn from his work. How he was able to consistently capture moments that reveal an authentic connection while working in the glossy fashion terrain. He seemed to be able to uncover the humanity that usually lies hidden underneath the persona that we all wear as protection. He said that he felt that he fell in love with his models on every shoot, and perhaps it's true. There's a level of passion that's required in order to drive a photographer to seek out powerful connections. You can't achieve this if you're operating purely on a logical, linear level.
He's truly interested in capturing women, who they really are, seeing their age, seeing the lines, the veins on the backs of their hands, their little crow's feet, absolutely everything. And seeing a woman also far away, thinking about something else entirely, but very much by herself and strong.
He's generous and kind, which are two qualities that are, when they're put together with a creative talent, are extremely seductive in all ways, because they make you want to really work.
It is challenging, and I really thought about it this morning coming to work, about who I am at this point in time, and how can I then show that in as honest and straightforward a way to the camera as possible.
It's probably significant that he was born the year before the Second World War ended and grew up in a small German industrial town called Duisburg. It had been decimated by bombing raids, and so he grew up with very little comfort and lots of harsh reality. Throughout his career, he held the uncomfortable position of being centrally aware of the realities of life, but finding himself working in a world that favored the light and the frothy. The friction between these two positions is what fed his creativity and drove him to extract substance out of shoots that primarily were about selling clothing. Lindbergh was one of the first photographers to include a narrative in his fashion shoots. His storytelling brought a new way of mixing fashion photography and art. This allowed his viewers to imagine the lives of his subjects. Film director Wim Wenders said that his sequences had the disjointed internal logic of music videos and the melodramatic look of old movie stills. During shoots, he wouldn't lock his camera down on a tripod. He would set up a scene and then move with the action, more like a photojournalist. He had his favorite models, those that were able to merge with a character and perform their part in his stories. His shoots would often look more like film sets. They could become big productions with crews and truckloads of equipment. His approach was extremely cinematic in a lot of ways, from the narrative, the lighting, and the strong emotional content. He was a fan of German expressionist cinema of the 20s and 30s, as well as Italian neorealism. It was a stripped-down form of filmmaking using ordinary people, not actors. He was particularly drawn to Fritz Lang's German expressionist film Metropolis, a silent movie made in 1927. For Lindbergh, the film resonated because he had grown up in a war-torn industrial town, and so he was familiar with the brutal nature of factories and the harsh lives of workers. There were a number of significant events that shaped his career. In 1988, he was asked to meet with the editor of American Vogue magazine, who he had turned down on a number of occasions because of their formal aesthetic.
I remember I saw Mr. Lieberman called me in his office because he was frustrated because I always said no to American Vogue. And he said, what is happening? My editors tell me that you not want to work for us. You know who we are? And I said, yes, I know. But he said, what is the reason? And I said, I can't photograph this kind of woman. It's just impossible. I'm totally demotivated. I'm not inspired.
Lieberman said, okay, do any story in any location with any models and bring me back some pictures of what you think a woman could be. So Lindbergh headed off to LA with 6 models and produced these very natural interactions with the girls wearing white shirts. What he had done is transform his models into heroines. Heroines that were not only beautiful, but also had personality, intelligence, and ambition. When he got back to New York and showed the pictures to Lieberman, the response was that Lieberman thought there was no way that he could actually use these type of pictures in his magazine. It was a don't call us, we'll call you kind of rejection. But 6 months later, editor Anna Winter took over the magazine and Lieberman resigned. One day, Winter was going through a drawer and came upon Lindbergh's pictures. She called him up and said, I would have given you 20 pages if you'd shot these for me. She commissioned him to shoot the cover of her debut issue in November 1988. A few years later, she included the white shirts image in their feature, Images from 100 Years of Vogue, calling it the most important photograph of the decade. Then in 1989, the British Vogue editor called and said, I want you to do the January 1990 cover and do something that expresses what you think the 90s are going to be about. So he chose 5 girls, Cindy Crawford, Naomi Campbell, Linda Evangelista, Tatiana Patitz, and Christy Turlington. This photograph became known as the birth certificate of the supermodels. This cover probably marks when the idea of supermodels really began. In the December 1994 issue of Harper's Bazaar, Lindbergh shot this lead image for a special feature called A Star is Born. The singer Madonna had been lined up for the shoot, but at the last minute cancelled, and then they booked Kate Moss. There's a certain similarity to Paul Strand's young boy, Gondeville, produced in 1951. Moss became one of Lindbergh's favourite models, and he helped her on the way to superstardom. He was a workaholic who could work 16-hour days. He survived on 3 to 4 hours sleep, and at one stage he was travelling so much between New York, LA and Paris that he became Air France's third most frequent flyer. 2 years before he passed away at the age of 74, he curated an exhibition and book called Untold Stories, which traces his photographic path through 4 decades. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.
Because now, for example, people say to me, God, you're 72 years old, that's terrible, you're still working? Why is that? And I said, that's why, because now, after all these years, now I know exactly how to handle the whole machine, no? And including me, no? I know what I feel, what I want to do, what I want to convey.